frankincense, and myrrh. We enjoy giving gifts. That's one of the legitimate ways that we have of transferring money or property, not through gambling. Another, I think, major issue with gambling now, of why I believe gambling is wrong, that the Bible, not that I believe it, let me back up, why the Bible teaches, God's Word teaches, gambling violates His principles. One of the big reasons is it violates the principle of stewardship. A steward is one who looks after the property of another. And in Luke chapter 12 and verse 42, and the Lord said, "Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his master will make ruler over his household to give them their portion of food in due season?" Who is that faithful and wise steward? Let me tell you who it is not. It is not the man who takes his master's possessions and gambles them away. Don't we see reports of that from time to time? People even take money that's not theirs. Well, are we not all stewards? What do we have that we did not receive? We read in 1 Corinthians. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. Everything we have, God has given to us. He has entrusted it to us. Are we being good stewards of that? In 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 10, as each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. We are good. We are stewards of God's grace. We are stewards of the gospel. We are stewards of what He has entrusted us with. How then can we take that and risk it unnecessarily in what we call gambling? Said very simply in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 2, moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. And let me tell you, when we take money and we risk it in games of chance, we are not being faithful stewards. I'll tell you another problem with gambling, and that is that gambling is addictive. There are people who have ruined their lives, literally, financially, emotionally, their families, because they could not stop gambling. It's like, I know I'm in the hole, but just one more time, and I'll win, and I'll be clear. And they keep trying, and they keep trying, and and it doesn't happen. We need to realize, folks, that gamble, the house is going to win. Oh, they'll let enough people get a little money every now and then to keep it going, but the house will not lose. But Paul said this about addiction. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 12, he said, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Now here Paul is talking about the various food and drink restrictions of the old law and bringing that forward to the law of Christ. And he said, I can eat all of that. I can partake of things the Jews under the old law were not allowed to. He said, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Paul said, I will not be mastered by it. I will not be controlled by it. He would go on to say in 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 27, he said, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified or should become a castaway, your version may say. There's discipline that we each must administer to ourselves and bring our bodies under subjection. And unfortunately, gambling has subjected many a person to it and has ruined many a life. The problem is illustrated in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 9, the concept, the mindset of many who might be addicted to gambling or just gamble on a very regular basis. He said in 1 Timothy 6 and verse 9, but those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. That's what we see with gambling. Why they're wanting to make that big score, and they fall into temptation and a snare, and to many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men. so aptly describes an addictive personality which drowned men in destruction and perdition. Another thing wrong with it, it is connected with just so many evils, isn't it? Some we've already talked about. But organized crime, drinking, theft, murder, prostitution, drugs, broken homes, all associated with gambling. Why would a Christian want to have part in all that? We walk after the Spirit, not after the flesh. The Lord said it this way in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 20. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. One of the reasons people who are not even who do not even oppose gambling from a Christian perspective oppose it because they see the harm that it does. They see the addictiveness. They see the homes broken and destroyed. But they see organized crime that so often moves in with gambling. And so the Lord said, let me tell you how you know something's good or not. Look at the fruits. Look at the fruit. And people will try to make the fruit look good. That's all. We can put this into education. We can do this for our schools and do this for this social program or that. And yet the harm far, far outweighs the benefit. I'm told that for every dollar that gambling brings in, $3 are spent trying to clean up the mess. By their fruit, the Lord said, you will know them. Gambling. Is it a sin? That's the question we started with. Is it a sin? Think about this. Lives are ruined. Homes are literally lost. Families are broken. Fortunes are lost. The poor are made poorer. Covetousness and greed abounds. It violates the principle of the golden rule and of loving your neighbor as yourself. It's selfish. It's worldly. It violates the principles of good stewardship. It's contrary to God's plan of good, honest work, and crime is rampant. And it leads people away from God and their faith. Is it a sin? Yes. Yes. We want to please God. We want to seek the old path. And as you seek the old path, you will not find God's people involved in gambling. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time as we continue to seek the old paths.
Praise God, give thanks to the Father in all that you say and do. Well, amen. Amen. Sing glory.